this moment's going to pass. And guess what? One day these folks are going to be answering to you. I don't know if that's true, but maybe in that moment it's a salve. I'm not real sure. So it is like any of us might respond to taking care of our own. It's just that I think God blessed me with a sense of defining our own as being broader, bigger, more audacious than just those that we are in blood relationship to. And I think if that's true, then not one of us can then see the other being, trampled on, stepped over, passed over, ignored, not seen, and like think it's okay. It's not going to be okay. That's not going to be okay with me. It won't ever sit right. And that means even if I am in the place of privilege and enjoyment, you can't even enjoy the thing. It doesn't feel like a privilege anymore. It feels like a burden because everybody can't be there with you. So during the campaign and that sort of thing, there wasn't a second thought, and there wasn't a staff person or anyone else who could have given me guidance to the contrary, because that's not how I operate, and that isn't how I move, whether in privileged or outside of it. It just isn't the way that it works for me. To the second part of your question of like, what do we do the day after? I want to go back to your earlier response to my question, which was simply that we all have a role to play.
Yeah.
Like God may not lay out the whole clear plan for you. God, whenever does he, right? Whenever does Spirit, does Source lay the whole thing out for you? It doesn't happen. That's why we have faith.
Yeah.
That's what faith in essence really is. It's like, okay, I can't see around the bend, but you've given me a piece of this thing, and I know I got to play my part. And God, just as you trust in me, I'm trusting in you to carry us through this thing.
Yeah.
That if I do my thing and then somebody, whomever you've handed the baton to, does their thing, and together collectively, then our thing gets done. So the important thing I think all of us have to carry is that we have to stop waiting for everybody else to do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That we have a thing to do that's been laid on our heart, on our spirit. There's a skill set that's been harnessed and cultivated and shaped and molded over our time. And like, that's the thing that we put our effort and energy into. We can't do it all.
Yeah.
Angela, you can't do it all. As mighty as you are, you can't do it all. You come in and out of that awareness as much as we can. But those of us who are fighters really do want to just do it all. We really do want to see it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so if the ball gets dropped, it's like, well, this on me to pick it up.
Yeah.
And in truth, nope, somebody else has been equipped with the pickup. And somebody else has been equipped with the pass. And somebody else has been equipped with this part of it. And together, this thing gets done. But if, there's the saying, and I know it gets oft overutilized, but you can't eat an elephant whole. Like those things that are just too big, you can't eat in one bite. There are sandwiches that you cannot eat.
I have only heard this saying on our podcast from you.
Is that right? When I said you can't.
Only time, twice. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, then maybe I need a new metaphor other than it ain't mine, by the way.
It's
a
okay,
narrative.
it's okay.
But the idea is that whatever that thing is, that burger that you would love to, take down in one bite, because that's how hungry you feel.
Too big.
You cannot do it in one bite. That there has to be several added. And guess what? It might not even be your bite that finishes this thing off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I completely respect that we all have a role to play. And then, Angela, if I could finally say, build yourself a squad. If you don't have it, get with one, because you must be surrounded by people of I think like-minded character who believe as well that they're not just waiting on you to go do the thing, but rather they're trying to tap in and do their part too, because there are a lot of takers out here.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this ain't for the faint of heart. This ain't the taker moment. We're trying to give so that we can receive. But Andrew, we all have to contribute.
We do have to contribute, and you're doing that at 3 a.m. Tell me why. What compelled you to do this at 3 a.m., to be in the shut-in like the church at 3 a.m.? Why? What compelled you? I told you about Gwen Moore. Tell me what compelled you.
The time, well, I ain't choose the time, but I did accept the time once it was presented to me. But I bought the vision. I'm not a good person on texting and following all the chain, but I do know that when a word comes forth, I may not be there for the subsequent 50, but on 51st, when it says it's go time, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing said it's go time, and now we're ready. So you put me in, coach, and I'm in. And but mostly, like, I see the size and the scale of this threat, and I completely get how some people can feel reduced by the moment. Really, like, not don't have the armor for the task, and that the challenge, the opposition is so big and so mighty. Who am I?
Yeah.
And that's why this whole idea of community, Angela, building, with each other is critical. Y'all aren't alone, and you're not the only ones um, who feel like downtrodden and not fully at scale when we're looking at the challenges that confront us. But together, like, we can throw a mighty punch. In fact, we could sustain quite a war.
Yeah.
If we're in this thing together. I fear for the other side when we all come together. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't fear for them because I think they're on the wrong side. But if I were them, I would be fearing us if we were opposite one another. Our ancestors, they made the path too plain for us to shrink. Who are we to shrink, please?
I love that. Okay, so you just talked about the scale of the threat.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you've also done that I always brag on, like I had anything to do with it, I didn't. Young Elected Officials Network at People for the American Way. Andrew Gillum, if Andrew Gillum knows how to do one thing, you know how to bench build. And the Republicans, the other side, knows how to build a bench. They also are very much more resourced. When we talk about Black people, not progressives, not Democrats, but Black people, building a bench that effectively gets our agenda and our needs met and our demands met. What do you think our next steps are? So we have this convening. You know, Black folks show up in crisis. We know how to do that.
Yeah.
But how do we endure and build the bench, AG? What do we do?
Well, first of all, I think on our side, we have to stop eating our young.
Ooh.
It's like the moment that you catch a whiff of a threat, a quote threat, the moment you see that person says it better, wears it better, looks at, whatever that thing is that causes insecurity in the people who hold the place right now, makes them reluctant to then invite you in and to say, you may not do it exactly like me, but you're going to do it your way. And your way actually may get us further. Who knows? But instead, I think very, very often we assess that threat and then we sideline them. We eat them. We eat the young. We make sure that their head doesn't rear itself again. And there's something so small, in my opinion, about that approach that I think we've got to really suspend with what is a very Eurocentric orientation, which is the belief that power is limited and must be hoarded by the few who have it. When in our community, I think our most true and earnest vision is that power is unlimited. That actually, the more you have, the more I inure to you, the more you inure back to me, and all of ours grows. And then we bring others in, and it grows, and that we don't have to eat each other to consume your power, your influence. So, number one, I think we have to, as a community, really divorce ourselves from a Eurocentric model of leadership and of leadership building that says there is only enough room for a very small few of us. I think that is aged. It does not serve us. And it's never been, I think, the crescent belief of our community. Two, I think we have to demonstrate some patience. Our those who are tapped, who want to be it on day one, you want all those powers and whatever to inure to you immediately. That in our community, and quite frankly, what the universe is calling for right now, is folks who are tried and true through the experience of living, the experience of going through some things, the experience of, hey, send some mass emails or be on the receiving end of the info. Whoever wants to be on the receiving end of @info, right? Everybody's questions and comment and whatnot. But it takes some of that to build some character and some strength so that you can recognize that you should never be dismissive or menial acting toward anybody's role in this movement. The people may have roles that you would not prefer to do anymore because you've passed that, but that doesn't mean they're meaningless.
Yeah.
They still have purpose. They still get us toward the greater goal. And with that discipline, Angela, of recognizing that on day one, I'm not about to be, the triple hitter, but that I can gradually get there if I listen and I observe. And it doesn't require you to agree with everything, but it does require you to be, curious about how people approach things different than you. To be curious enough to say, you know what, I wouldn't have done it that way, but I'm curious what made you do it that way. There's learning in curiosity rather than judgment, right? So I think there's that. And then I think finally, this is a much larger sort of meta piece of this, which is we have to start building our own institutions and being honest with the people, both the ones who fund it as well as those who experience it, that this is not an overnight success, right? I remember seeing this commercial with Alicia Keys. It was on MTV or something like that. But she's basically, had been the recipient of this award. And she said, my overnight success has been decades in the making. That's discipline. There's that's understanding that this thing ain't gonna pop off for everybody all at once.
No.
In fact, there isn't a story we can point to where it popped off for that person all at once in the moment in which they chose. No, there was likely a lot of work, a lot of steps, a lot of discipline that led to whatever that moment is. But I think we've got to build a kind of infrastructure that says, if you invest in this work of candidate building or organizer building work, that we're going to have some missteps along the way. And those missteps are going to strengthen this program and to help us be better in the end. That I'm not going to promise you're going to get 100% of what the 100% you put in, but it will pay dividends. I promise you it will pay dividends. But be patient with us to learn these lessons and to cure that ill so that what comes out on the other side is exactly what is necessary for this moment. You've asked me all the questions and now you run all on my little 30 minutes out.
No, but hold on.
I can't ask you anymore, huh?
But guess what happened? Guess what happened? Lolo texted and said, can y'all please stay on for 10 more minutes?
Yes, so and it's my question.
We're bringing in some extraordinary people, some that we follow. Sorry, I just put my bun on the side down. We're bringing in some extraordinary people to join us. One is a content creator that we saw him, and Lola was like, oh my God, he's coming to the DNC. We need him. I was like, oh my God, I love him. Garrison Hayes is joining us.
All right.
There's also a legend. Hey, Garrison.
What's up, bro?
What's up? It's good to see y'all.
Oh, you see he got that old pretty filter on. I've got this basic old camera.
We have another good sister among us. Her name is Lauren Victoria Burke. Lauren is someone who I don't know how our CBC tenure would have happened without Lauren. Lauren was like, we always talk about shadow staff.
Yeah.
Lauren was like shadow staff, okay? The CBC jobs tour, the CBC.
Oh, yeah.
Every movement needs
the mix. So I just want to know, we go way back, like crack, okay?
Absolutely.
Anyway, welcome y'all. We are in the midst of our 24-hour marathon. Stateofthepeople.media is where you can find us. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you tell your friends, family members, and loved ones, even your frenemies, to tune right on in. We have work to do with the state of emergency. You ain't got to love each other. You just got to agree 75% of the time. That's a majority. We will take a super majority at that. But I want to hear from Garrison and Lauren. What made y'all say yes to this? And then I got a focus group poll.
Oh, Lord.
Garrison, go ahead.
Okay. You know what? Well, first of all, good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
We're doing it. We're here. I mean, what made me say it is that we really are living in an extraordinary moment where this is so important. This is important enough to be up in the middle of the night to do it and to make sure that the truth is out there, that they can hear that people can hear voices that are telling the truth, that are mobilizing, that give us a little bit of hope, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So much of what I encounter in my reporting, when I'm talking to folks, when I'm talking to my family, is despair. And folks are starting to feel lethargic. And so to have this kind of infusion of energy and focus, which I know we'll talk about later, that's what motivates me. It's why I don't feel tired right now, despite it being kind of the middle of the night. It's because this is important, and it's giving people a little bit of hope, a little bit of direction, and a lot of information that's necessary right now.
That's right.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Andrew.
Lauren.
Uh,
She's like 3 a.m.,
like,
y'all.
that's right. I'm actually a night owl. I actually like late night stuff. I'm up late at night anyway. I'm typically not.
That's when she used to send most of us her messages. Don't let this fool you. Okay.
Yeah.
He would be like, found the alarm, y'all.
Yeah.
You paying attention? Be like, girl, we was asleep. Lauren,
Yeah.
tell us what it is.
Yeah. It's like, so also too, with the culture that we're in, you know, you're not free from the phone until about maybe 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I got people that call at, 6 or 7 in the morning sometimes. It's amazing. So I actually like the late at night hours. It's quiet, you can think and all that, but I can't deny it. Like Andrew said, it wasn't really my choice time. I don't know that I would have picked this time, but it's cool. I'm glad to be here. And like Garrison said, it definitely needs to be a convening, and definitely needs to be a team feeling. And this is a historic time. I mean, I was a history major, not at Virginia Tech, but American University. And this is some history that we're seeing that is unprecedented, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
Lauren, to that point, and I want to hear if you guys have talked to your parents or your elders or loved ones in your family who are older. I called my dad a couple weeks ago, and I was like, Dad, I was young when, Reagan was in office, Jimmy Carter, I was October 79. So it's very tail end of this.
Mhm.
Like, what do you like? Tell me if this George H.W. is something I don't remember. Like, which president is this? Like, Papa Rye, y'all look or said to me on the other side of the phone, man, hell no, I ain't never seen no like this before.
That's your daddy.
So I want to know if your elders are saying something similar. Are they saying, no, like this is scarier than the 60s, than the 50s? Is this scarier than the 40s? Is there something about this that's familiar? What are y'all hearing from your elders?
Yeah, it's a good question. I asked a couple of the older people in my life this exact same question, Angela, and I'm hearing a little bit of two things. One, I'm hearing from my grandmother, my Nana, who is amazing. She was born in 1942, just as beautiful as she has ever been. Okay. And she feels like she's never seen anything like this before, just to be totally honest. But I talked to another journalist who told me, she kind of relayed to me that she felt like in 1968, 1967, in 1969, and then through the 70s, she, as a young lady, felt like she would not make it through that time. She expressed that like it kind of felt like despair. It felt like the world was over. She actually shared that she told her dad that she didn't plan on getting married or having kids because there wasn't going to be a world for her, for her to have a family. And one of the kind of things that she shared with me was that you kind of just got to keep living. You got to just keep fighting. Even when it feels that way, you have to keep going. And I think we are the beneficiaries of that resilience. I think about my grandmother who grew up in Georgia, in the segregated South, and the things that she endured, and she just kept going. And so I would be almost an embarrassment to my family if I were to give up now, right? If in this moment I decided that it was too hard and too bad, and so I couldn't keep going. And so that's part of what motivates me, to be honest with you, is that, man, my ancestors went through so much worse, and they went through things that felt unprecedented in their own way. And they still found a way to put language to the moment and to find resilience and to organize and to keep going. And so I feel like I don't have the space to just kind of wallow, right? Like we just got to kind of get it together. And I really do appreciate that. That's what Angela and Joy and Andrew and Lauren and all these other people who are a part of this. I'm so thankful that this is what y'all are doing.
Yeah, my older relatives are unfazed. They're unfazed by anything. I mean, one side from New York came over from Barbados, the other side from Virginia. They're just unfazed. They're not feeling threatened. They're not feeling anything. I mean, they're not worried. They're worried, but they're not. Again, Black people have been through so much that it's very hard to scare us with things like, oh my goodness, if you don't vote for so and so, then this is going to happen. Like, that doesn't really work well for, I think, a lot of older voters in particular, because they've seen so much and been through so much. So when they compare and contrast the history, they're just not as, it's not that they're not worried. Everybody understands that this is a very difficult and very scary situation, particularly since it feels like, 2 months feels like 8 months or a year. And I keep saying to myself, how are we doing this for 4 years?
Yeah.
And when I talk to all my friends who are members of Congress, they don't have any answers. When I listen to their town halls, they don't have any answers. It's a very scary thing to listen to, particularly if you're listening to senior members of the Congress. Don Beyer from Virginia had a town hall today, and a teletown hall. And he's a smart guy. It was a great, he's quick on his feet. He knows a lot. And but when people call, and he had 2 federal employees who called who had been fired, one from USAID, both were disabled. And they were asking, the basic question is come up on everybody's teletown hall, which is, what are we going to do? What is the plan? And there's really no specific answer there. We're hearing from members at the Department of Education, this is going to be the week where Trump is going to declare that he's going to shut the Department of Education. And I said to a senior staffer friend of mine, I said, well, what's the plan for that? I mean, what are y'all going to do? And there's no specific answer. So that's scary. But my relatives are not, they're not easily scared. But I'm not, I'm not as confident as they are. I wish I was, but
are they war veterans? Like, why are they so gangster, Lauren?
I do have a lot of Navy. I've got a Navy, I've gotten an Army, and I've just got my mom who's never served in the military, but this is my mom. But they're just, I think they're in a lot of ways sort of like a lot of older Black folks. They've seen a lot, and they just sort of a this too shall pass feeling to their views. But, again, they understand the threat, though.
Yeah. Andrew, what about you?
What I value about the responses we just heard from both Garrison and Lauren is it really does underscore the value of intergenerational organizing, communicating, because a lot of us are running around with our heads on fire, and for good reason, given that, again, the size of this threat. But context matters. Setting these things in some sort of right and more proper orders that we can, digest and say, today's not going to be our ruin, that we've seen really perilous times before. And not just because, God said it was going to be okay, but because he's equipped us with the knowledge and the skills and the tools and all of the things to make us ready for the moment, we're going to be all right. I think what we have to, now drill much deeper on is, okay, what is the knowledge? What are those skills and the various tools that we have at our disposal to not just survive this moment, but to really resist it and create the kind of outcome that we want, not just let the things happen. And what comes out the other side is, in a few years, we'll renew the central government and hire back employees who are needed in this. Like, that's not good enough. To go from pre-Trump to Donald Trump to then go back to pre-Trump isn't the ideal here, I have to believe. And this is why, Lauren, your point around members of Congress, very smart and otherwise really quick individuals being at a loss for not just words, but ideas and ways in which we're going to survive and thrive out of this thing. The scary part of that is because all of us are looking at, we're like, if we don't know nothing, at least there's some people who know something.
Yeah.
And right now we feel really out of our depth because there doesn't feel like there are the people who know what to do, right? And I guess to the point of this whole 24 hours, we are what we've got. We are what we've got. Right. And so we're kind of having to pull all of what comes to the table from each and every one of us, our collective, to figure our way through this. My only thing that I hope that we take away from it is that this crisis moment that we're in, let's not let it escape us and produce something on the other side, but rather let's figure out how we gain control of it, not let a good crisis go to waste. And on the outer end, that we've got, I don't know, a community that we've built that is much closer to liberation and freedom and the beloved community, rather than just going back to some status quo.
Yes.
And I don't know that we started to touch that, hem yet.
We just at the threshold. And I want to hear from you, Garrison. And I got a question about Andrew's tools he brought up.
Yeah, I want to say, I was a pastor for a number of years, and so it's easy for me to come up with a biblical example. I'm not gonna lie to you, okay? And so the thing,
come on, Pastor.
I'm gonna go into that for just a moment, okay? And then we'll come back.
Sure.
To
No, we like
The
it.
time's always right for it. The time's always
It's
right.
Bible study day somewhere. Let's go.
Somewhere. I will say, I think about the story of the children of Israel. This term Ebenezer, right? It's something that I think Black people have held on to for a very long time. It's a part of that old hymn, "Come Thou Fount, Here I Raise My Ebenezer," right? If you go back to that story, Ebenezer means stone of help. It's this reminder of where God helped the Israelites push back their enemies. And at that very place, they left a stone so that whenever they come back to that place, they are reminded of what God did for them in that moment. And I think this is part of the reason why there has been such a concerted effort to diminish Black history. It's because it is a way to stop us. It's a way to keep us from remembering how God helped us push back that enemy at different times throughout our history. And so I think what this moment is, both this live stream and all of the organizing that I'm seeing happening in this moment, I think it is in a way, it is an erecting of an Ebenezer. It is an erecting of a stone of help, a kind of a moment for us to be able to remember what we've done with God's help, with community, with each other in the past, to be able to push back the enemy of regression, the enemy of racism, the enemy of segregation in times past. I think about the legal battles that were fought throughout our history. Folks like Constance Baker Motley and Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall and Z. Alexander Luby, and the list goes on and on and on, of all of the ways that we have organized, gotten together, and outsmarted bigotry time and time again. And I think it's important in this moment that we call those people's names and that we remember the organizing power of Black people. We're seeing a little bit of that tonight and tomorrow and in this time. But it's so important, I think, for folks to really remember what we've done. We didn't get here by convincing white folks to like us.
Come on.
We got here by fighting the battle. We fought the battle. And we did it together. And so I think it's important. I think we got to raise some Ebenezers and remind ourselves and remind each other of what we've done and how we've done it, not just the platitudes, not just the niceties, but the actual work that went into getting to where we are today and the work that it will take to keep going. One of the things that I'm thinking about right now is that I think there's so many of our leaders, those who are maybe in the opposition, who feel like, the tides will turn and times will change, that it's just a cycle in the midterms or in the 2028, things will just be, but there was real work. Let's be clear. There's real work to get that it isn't an inevitability. And so I think that's what we need right now. And I'm hopeful that we're doing that and that folks are being reminded and being woken up and seeing those kinds of stones of help, those memorials of where we've come from and what we need to do again.
All right, preacher.
I gotta ask you. I mean, the doors of the church are now open. Then it was a word, and we definitely gonna come back to the stones. But I want to go for a moment to tools, because it is. I don't want to give us too much comfort, and I hate to be that person. We still in crisis, y'all. You know what they say, America, you in danger, girl. Like we really got to deal with where we are before we get to where we ought to be. And so I want to focus for a moment on tools. So here we are on stateofthepeople.media. Let me tell y'all why real quick. So your girl deals with anxiety. I am panicking about when we lose access to all these platforms we rely on. We have built social media followings. There's algorithms that favor our posts that, we have all these impressions. We got likes. I don't know how long we're going to be able to access these platforms. And at first I was like, well, Twitter and it's kind of already, it went to hell in a handbasket. We got Instagram and Zuck and them were at the inauguration writing checks, cashing them out. And then they're even saying YouTube. In a lot of ways, YouTube suppresses content. So we were like, well, we might as well build this thing over here just in case we can't get access to these institutions, these things that we built so much of our lives on now. So I'm coming to y'all about tools because in a moment, you know, Black people are creative. We can make $1 out of 15 cents. So I want to know what other tools we will need to have at our disposal, or what other tools we will need to go back to, because we may not be able to rely on these other tools much longer. I think that's an important conversation for our people to have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can control. We do have to control the game and do what Isaac Hayes does and own platforms. Ownership is a big key in what you're saying. I know it's difficult, but that type of thing is what we have to really funnel our attention on. We do, of course, recognize, as you're saying, Angela, that we got a bunch of tech bros that are owning these platforms and they're controlling the algorithms of the platforms. And it gets us Jan 6. It gets us people believing lies. It gets us a reality of violence, and I think a level of tension that we haven't seen in a long time. And I remember when I started working, when I was a federal employee some years ago, we didn't have to worry about a lot of these platforms. I still say to members of Congress all the time, the most important staffer in your office is not your chief of staff, it's your comms director. Your comms director is up 24/7 worrying about something, and something is happening on some platform. And the typical something that's happening is probably defamatory. So as somebody who's become an accidental crisis manager, we live in the golden age of defamation. And so these tools are used by people who want to destroy other people with them. And we have seen it happen again and again, particularly with regard to X. There's no regulation on these platforms. I do think we do have to, fight on the battlefield that we're on, though. And we fight on it pretty good. Black people over-index on a lot of these platforms. And we took over Twitter, which is why the dude from Pretoria bought it, because he hated the fact that we were controlling things like Oscar So White and everything else.
There it is.
And but then you go to something like a TikTok, and then there's something else that comes on. Now they're trying to shut down TikTok for reasons I think are completely political and have nothing to do with national security, but that's just me. And I think we dominate our content and our culture, and the strength that we have in the culture dominates. I mean, as Garrison has shown us 1 trillion times, his type of communications is the future. Legacy media is in fact dying, and this short form communication that people control, where they pack a bunch of information into something like Garrison does, is where we are going. So I do think that we shouldn't worry so much. Sure, we have to be mindful of the fact that on that inaugural stage on January 20 were several people who are not our friends, and one of whom owns, a major paper, another of whom is Elon Musk, as we know. And these people are not our friends. We have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in here and say that I think that, Lauren, I think you're spot on. One of the things that I like to do is try to learn from what the folks over there are doing. And one thing that they do is they collaborate, for one. I mean, if you show up, if you are in this kind of Joe Rogan universe, for example, they are going to platform you, which helps you get your own kind of thing, and you kind of share a little bit of an audience, and that kind of grows in its own way. And so there's all of this kind of cross-pollination that's happening. The other very practical thing that a lot of folks are doing is recognizing that these platforms are incentivized to kind of gatekeep the attention of the folks who are on the page. So if you're sending people other places, they're not going to show your stuff. So I noticed that a lot of the posts that promoted this, many of them were kind of suppressed, to be totally honest with you, right? And so I noticed that. And so one of the really important things that we can do is to begin to try to own our audience. I love, Lauren, that you're talking about ownership. A part of that process is getting emails, is getting people to sign up for a newsletter. So you own the email address, the email list, and you can email. That way there's no algorithm curating where in the feed your post is showing up. It's going to the top of their inbox when you say, hey, come out for this thing, or show up for this thing, or pay attention to that thing. And so I think it's important that we're kind of creating some of these kind of funnels and pipelines to make sure that we have access to the folks who are interested in what we're doing. And so again, part of that is cross-pollination. And part of that, I think, is getting folks to kind of funnel into an email list in some way. That's just very practical. It's not, it's not sexy, but it's very practical and it's necessary.
Andrew, I want to hear. Tell me about a tool that we should be using. Either it could be a throwback or a new one. What you think?
Well, first of all, I can't add to I think the brilliance we've already heard, other than to just remind us not to forget, a lot of these really basic forms of which, to give you an example, I got called by by a woman at church who oversees, I'm not sure how many families like my own, who calls every now and again to check in to make sure we're doing okay. And is there anything we want to put on the pastor's prayer list, or that we need her to intercess on our behalf to do? And it really struck me. It reminded me of my grandmother, who used to be on the horn, making similar calls and wasn't asking if you want her to intercess. She was intercessing on your behalf. You spoke it, and she created, she came up with the prayer that had you feeling lighter after that call was over. I only use as an example to say, there are tried and true methods of how it is we can get a word through. And I don't just mean in the religious sense, get a word through on the main line, but I also mean just with and amongst each other that, I know now my kids, they shudder if the phone actually rings. The text is one thing, but for a phone to ring is a whole nother level. It's like, what did I do? And what an intrusion this is, that the phone would be ringing. And I guess there's a value to some of those old tricks that a lot of us sort of have grown out of, but frankly, maybe coming back around as we think about the kind of hegemonic, opponents that exist on the other side that control so much. I would just hate for us to look up and look around and see that, the skills that were so basic no longer exist. So just reconnecting with the basics, y'all. Knock on somebody's door.
Yeah.
Say hello. Use your voice to speak and encourage something in return. It doesn't have to be a frightening affair if we start to do it just a little bit more. But right now, it psychs a lot of people out.
One of the things, to go back to the pasta, about this concept of Ebenezer, a stone of help. I'm curious to know, since we can end on a higher note as we bring the people to the altar, and bring them to the water, because we do need to be baptized too, because I don't know what to be doing right now. We need relief. So when you consider a stone of help, I want to throw out to you all, and this is also my tool, so it's doubling, but just given the time, it's doubling quickly. My dad, my best friend, and a chef and her son, started this Sunday dinners concept. We're doing old school Sunday dinners. Black people love Sunday dinners. We're doing them one Sunday a month in my hometown of Seattle. They're by invitation only, but it's a way to build community. And y'all, we did the first Sunday dinner last Sunday, and it was beautiful.
I bet.
It felt spiritual. It was so good. And so I think my challenge to the people, my stone of help, and my offering to the people as well, is to gather beyond these devices, to reconnect the way that our people did. There's a reason why they gathered around a meal. It's where guards fall and where help shows up, and where you remember that connectivity that we're going to need to not only get through the next 4 years, but if we're smart, through generations. And so I want us to not lean on the easy organizing tool, but on the tactical, smarter, sturdier ones, which are rooted in human connection, because we are spiritual beings too. So that's my offering of a stone of help. And I hope y'all will offer one too with the 4 minutes we have left. So that's 4 minutes for y'all.
What you got, Lauren?
You know what? It's funny. I have a friend that does a salon like that.
Lauren, your mic went out.
You
You just sound far away a little bit.
Oh yeah. You know what? You're Right.
There you go. There you go. It's three
Sorry.
something. We back. We back.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's the
You know,
hour.
I have a friend that does a salon like that, exactly as you said. Like it's once a month, and you have a topic, and everybody talks, and everybody eats, and he's got a big house, and it's fantastic. You know, so much of organizing is built on how many people you can reach, and so people are thinking in that way because of social media, everything is, you know, judged by the metrics of the like and the how much followers and this and that. But I get what you're saying, Angela. It's like so much more intimate to know people on that level, because you do end up finding things out and end up, you know, with some friends that you didn't know you would have through that experience. So yeah, sure. My my grandmother, who has a huge dining room table in her place in Brooklyn, that was always the gathering point at Thanksgiving, and that feeling is fantastic. I just think that we need to understand, though, in the moment that we're in, that the enemy is building on a big scale, and that scale is you know, sort of they're trying to control things in a way that is extremely scary. Like as somebody who has a bunch of law enforcement in my family, I was particularly shaken to see the FBI get dismantled, for example, every point of accountability getting dismantled, the IGs getting fired within 48 hours. These are the things that when you're doing that type of thing on that type of scale, we got to be aware of that. I mean, I do think you do a lot of times in organizing, you start small and you get big, but we got a situation here. We got to get big real fast. There's an urgency here that is unmistakable, and it's scary. But I do like your point, Angela, because I have the same thing in my life as well. So it's a monthly dinner, and it's fantastic. So I know I hear where you're coming from.
I appreciate that. Garrison, and then Andrew gonna close us out.
I'll just say quickly, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I think as I look back, having moved away and all this stuff over the years, one thing that I remember is that it felt like there were no strangers when it was Black. We always say hello to each other. Maybe that's a Southern thing. We say hello to each other. You're standing in line at the grocery store, you strike up a conversation, and so much of that is lost. And I think the task at hand is to convince not the country to be Democrats, but to see themselves as a collective again, to see themselves as a part of something that deserves to be held together, deserves to be interconnected. And I do think it starts, Rory Wood Jr. has a great joke about this in his most recent special. I think it starts with having conversations with strangers, talking to people in the grocery store line, talking to people on the streets, and being willing to look folks in the eye and have those real life conversations. So it's building on what you said, Angela, that point of connection. And so I'm kind of recommitting myself to do the same thing, but I think it's so important. And so I think that's one of the tools that we have to implement as well.
I love that. When I was mayor of Tallahassee, I started something called the Longest Table, which was, yes, a very, very long table, dining table, but we broke it up into little households, little congregations, little groups of people. All you had to do was to say, I wanted to join a Longest Table, and you would be assigned a place to go, break bread with the neighbor, and it made politics more accessible. It made talking about your neighborhood, your community, your desires more accessible. And we would host these, you know, every several months. And you were talking about thousands of people coming to their respective table. So I get what it means to lower the threshold and lower the barriers so that people can do what's basic and human and connection. I would say whatever the form we take, we're not going to be able to get ourselves out of these kinds of environments, these kinds of political situations that we now find ourselves, unless we invite more people into this process. If we had the same turnout and from 2024 duplicated 4 years later, or 4 years beyond that, or 2 years in a midterm, there is no future to that. The table has to be enlarged. When more than half this country is choosing not to participate in the democratic process, small d democracy, democratic. We can't build back. We can't expand democracy. We can't help people see the value of what this system can be to and for us if we're only dealing with the marbles that are on the table. So whatever the strategies we pursue, they've got to be toward the end of bringing more of us into the pie, because there's certain defeat here if we don't. So this table's got to grow for sure.
Yep.
It sure does. Hello, look at the conscious leaders in the building.
Yes, good morning, good morning.
Good
Good
morning
morning
Good morning.
and good night.
and good night. We're echoing somewhere, and I'm not sure why. But hopefully we can get that resolved. Lolo, are y'all hearing echo too, or is it just me?
I'm hearing it as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it is. It's the conscious lead. You're gonna have to do something about that. I don't know, buddy. But well, we're gonna sign off. Lolo, this is our Native Land Pod research producer, everything producer, our dog Monkey. Lolo been knocking it out. So Lolo, we thank you. Y'all have had me on the shut-in list. I've been here active about 4 hours myself. So I think that, at this time, I just want to honor Garrison, Lauren, and Andrew for your commitment. I know we are cutting into the time of the illustrious attorney Ariva Martin's session. The Conscious Lead is killing it. Y'all need to follow him on social.
Yeah.
Please know that these are amazing folks. Y'all were just getting started with this family conversation. 24-hour marathon. It is because we are in a state of emergency. And so we want to ensure that you hear from the state of the people. Don't watch that State of the Union. That's going to be nonsense. This is where we're going to keep it real, keep it truthful, and keep you activated.
That's right. Sleeping shifts, y'all. Love you and good night. Or
All right, y'all go ahead and get off.
What'd you say, Lolo?
I said, y'all go ahead and get off. Good night. Real quick, before Garrison and Lauren leaves, I know that we are getting into another show or segment, I will say, but we had Consciously in the back and we did not get to have him on. And I just want to take 5 minutes because as many of you all know, and you've heard Angela say this, it has taken a huge team to put this together in 48 hours, less than that. And so we are here at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And so I just want to be able to honor the time commitment of you all being able to get on. I know that I hit y'all up like less than 6 hours ago. And I'm like, hey, hop on here. Let's have this conversation. And so really quick, I just want to take just a couple minutes to have the floor. I do want to ask some questions to Consciously. So if you all could stay with me for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to ask, I just want to hear what's your thoughts on I think we have been real nervous, or people have been saying like the media is being is taking over and being the end. It's like it's just the end of times. And I just want to ask you Consciously, like, how do you feel the media's role has played a part in what we see unfolding in the administration? What we see unfolding in people's fears and people's anxiety, what we see unfolding, and how we see that the media has been weaponized against us. And so I just want to get your thoughts on that really quick.
Yeah, I think that
we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? No.
I can hear you. It's just a little low.
It's a little low.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like your something's turned down.
Better now?
It's not, but we're gonna roll with this. Scoot up and talk closer to us.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes, I hear you.
Yes. I think that a lot of our fear and our uncertainty and our paranoia is structured by our social media consumption. I would make a distinction between traditional media and kind of new media, because I think that a lot of people that's on social media right now, we know that we don't have to have our message dictated, you feel me, the way that a lot of traditional media has. When Garrison and I want to make a video, we don't have to go through any kind of channels to post that video. It's like, if we can defend it, do we feel comfortable posting, post. I think right now, us trying to maintain a balance between media consumption and kind of doom and gloom, and being able to poke our heads from behind our phones and see what's going on in the world. What I know is that a lot of my uncertainty, doom and gloom, a lot of my, fear comes from how I consume media. But I also know that if I just try to like let media go, I might become I feel like ignorant or unaware of what's going on around me. So to me, the last thing I say in answering this question is the responsibility that we have as media moving forward is being able to inform our audience and being able to make sure that the information that we give is legitimate. You know what I'm saying? It's been fact checked and it's being expressed in a way that I think is more accessible to everyday people.
I definitely appreciate you saying that. If there was some final words that you had for this going into this, I wouldn't say it's necessarily union, but this congressional address that we're going to see, what would you say? Like, what is your thoughts about it? What would you say to your audience?
Man, I think of this documentary I seen a little bit ago about the human manipulation of how social media is dictated and how it plays with our emotions and our feelings and making it where we stay on the app. I think that it's something that we should be very conscious of, no pun intended, and thinking about how our emotional responses is being used against us, or our emotional responses is being used to perpetuate keeping our attention. And I think that being able to define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner is the most important thing that we can do right now. Rest in peace to the great Huey P. Newton. But definitely media is a lot of the ways how we understand politics. Media is a manifestation of politics, and some of us view media as being neutral or being objective. And I know that the way the algorithm is dictated or the way that my content is disseminated, it's all based in politics.
Yeah. So, okay, we're getting off of here so we can get to the next segment. But I want to ask you all as a takeaway, where can people see you? We're talking a lot about mainstream media, and now we're talking about, how Elizabeth Booker, she was having this conversation. It is so important to support, and it's because it's hard, content creators, because you get in there and people see it's glamorous, but really trying to make the money on the end to support what it is that you're doing. Sometimes it's very difficult. I just want you all to plug yourself. Where can people find you all? Yeah, I'm gonna start with Gary, saying that we just work our way down and around.
Okay. I'll say, okay, so you can find me on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. If you're already on YouTube, that's easy. At Garrison Hayes on YouTube. So you can find me here or there. You can find me on Instagram at Garrison H. Either way, all of those places, you can click the link in the bio and find me on all the platforms, including Substack as well. And of course, keep up with my work with Mother Jones at motherjones.com.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Garrison. I just want to say, Garrison and Consciously, you guys are amazing. What you guys do is absolutely freaking amazing. It is the future of media. I'm Lauren Burke. I do own a Substack called Black Virginia News. And you can find me there. Find me on YouTube at Lauren Burke. I shy away from anything that has anything to do with Mark Zuckerberg. So IG, I'm on there, but I don't really use it. I'm on Facebook, but I just do that for my family. So I don't really do anything. And also I tend to, be on platforms that you can actually make money on. So I am on TikTok at BurkeFile. But you guys keep doing what you're doing. I mean, extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. It's an honor to be with you too. And Lola, thanks for everything. I know you're working your ass off. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Lolo, first, now that I'm reading my email again, I want to apologize. I'm Central Time. I thought I was getting up 30 minutes before. And like, I missed it. What y'all talking about? It was Eastern Time, and I'm in Central Time Zone. And talk about, man, listen, I appreciate y'all. I'm the Conscious Lead. You can find me really on any social media platform that allows for me to make a profile, which is almost on all of them. My motto is education is elevation. I'm now currently in the midst of writing a book. It should be getting published very soon. I do workshops, facilitations, as well as different consulting. Get at me at theconsciouslead.com. And I appreciate y'all for allowing me to be on the State of the Media, State of People media.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and send y'all on about y'all way. Y'all can get y'all time back and go get some rest.
Thanks a lot.
All right. So next up, we have some heavy hitters. I know I've been getting on their nerves today. Like I said, it's taken a village to pull this together. And you all have been so just generous and patient with us and really giving your time. So I want to bring on and introduce Miss Ariva Martin. Thank you so much for joining us. And then I'm going to bring on your guest here.
Hello. Thank you.
I know I've been talking to you all day.
Good to see you. This is phenomenal. Shout out to Andrew. She had to jump off and take a nap, but I've been texting her, telling her what a great job she and the entire team have done. And my amazing guest who agreed to be up at 4 in the morning on East Coast time. All right, for the bros. Dr. Eichhardt, maybe if you rotate your camera, you'll be horizontal like
okay.
Yeah.
Is that did I get horizontal? There you go.
There you go. All right. There you go. All right. Well, later this evening at 5 p.m. Eastern time, Donald Trump will deliver a speech to a joint session of Congress. Now, it's technically not a State of the Union address, but it is an address similar to ones that George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama gave shortly after their inaugurations. Now, this will be Trump's first opportunity to discuss his first 6 weeks in office of his second term, a term that we all know has upended not only Washington, D.C., but the entire nation. Now, Trump posted on social media yesterday, his Truth social media site, that tomorrow will be big. He said that. And then he went on to say, I will tell it like it is. Well, we do know if Donald Trump's lips are moving, he will be telling lies. That's why we are here tonight at this 24-hour marathon, this morning, I should say, the state of the people. We are here to tell it like it really is, to separate fact from fiction, to give the American people an alternative to what they are going to hear and see in that performance that Donald Trump is calling a speech to the joint sessions of Congress. And what's on my mind tonight, and I know what's going to be on the minds of hundreds of thousands of workers across this country, government workers, that is what is going on? How is it that a billionaire by the name of Elon Musk can come into government with no experience, with no opportunity to do any kind of evaluation, and just whole-scale fire tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, lay them off, cast them aside as if they have no value, as if they have no worth? How can they do that? Many of them fired simply because they are quote unquote DEI hires. So one of the things we're going to talk about a lot during this next hour, Dr. Rabouin and Dr. Eichhardt, are how did DEI become such a bad word? How did DEI become that which makes you subject to termination if you work for the government? I'm thinking of my cousin niece, who has spent 10 years working for the federal government and has gotten one of those notices that she's being laid off. She got a notice to that effect on one day, and then the next day her boss told her, well, ignore that. She is an emotional wreck. She had planned to retire with the government, and now her job, her career is all up in the air. So much uncertainty, so much emotional trauma that my cousin niece and so many others are experiencing. And who better to have this conversation about how we got to this moment other than my good friends, Dr. Omikanga Dabinga, who is a professor of intercultural communication at American University, as well as joining me is Dr. David Eichhardt, professor of African American diaspora studies at Vanderbilt University. Thanks so much for hanging with a sister at 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, and for lending your voices to this very, very important topic. I've talked to both of you at different times about this topic, but we are at a critical moment because, like I said, later today at 5 p.m. EST, Donald Trump is going to tell his version of why these hundreds of thousands of workers have been laid off. We know it's going to be a lie. So it's just so important for us, Dr. Dabinga, to set the record straight. So help us understand how we got here. How is it that particularly those employees who happen to be Black, happen to be brown, happen to be queer, are being fired because they are so-called DEI hires?
Well, one of the things that Trump did was he primed the country for this. He primed the country, whether we're talking about Trump and the Republican Party in general, they primed the country for these types of layoffs and ignorance that we're seeing right now and hate, because they program people with the language. They, as Lyndon B. Johnson said while he was president, I learned at a young age, if you can convince the poorest white man that he's better than the best colored person, he won't realize you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him someone to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. The Republican Party has spent the last, particularly under Trump, first term, running in 2015 and the like, spent their time demonizing other people. They spent time tearing down other people. They spent time othering other people. They gave someone other people to look at. So whether it was Black people, whether it's LGBTQ people, whether it was people who are disabled, whether it's people who practice anything relating to DEI. Now we got to remember, before that, it was Black Lives Matter. Then it turned into woke. Then it turned into CRT. Now it turned into DEI. And all those four things, add them all together, they all equal Black. So he kept targeting and getting people upset. Well, maybe I am suffering because gay people have more rights. Maybe I am suffering because women have more rights. Maybe I need to target abortion and their right to choose and the like. So they were priming this. And the challenge that people did not understand was that he was priming everybody together. But if you just gave someone else to look at, they weren't realize that their own pocket was being picked. And so now what he's doing is he had a divide and conquer mentality that has played out perfectly for him in the administration. That's why when all of these cuts and things started happening, we weren't unified as a people. We weren't together as a people. Him and Steve Bannon's mindset was flood the zone, flood the zone, flood the zone. And how many stories are we seeing in these FAFO moments, right, where people are saying, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for this. Yeah, you did vote for this. You just didn't think it was going to happen to you, because you were so caught up in you and this society, this me culture where everybody's caught up in looking at themselves and vanity online. Nobody was thinking about, not enough people, I should say, because not enough people were thinking about the other person. And his divide and conquer strategy, which is what he used in his corporate world, he just applied to America. And here we are.
It's interesting, Dr. Eichart, 61% of government workers happen to be white. Only 18% of government workers are African American. So when Donald Trump was running, when he announced that he was going to give this position of, the efficiency position to Elon Musk, and they were going to go through the government and cut what they call, waste, fraud, and abuse, it didn't seem to bother a lot of Trump voters, because as Dr. Debinga just said, many people thought that meant someone other than them. And as long as it was someone other than them, they were okay with it. Now you have white workers, government workers, 61% of the government, as I said, are white employees. They are on television. They are on social media. They are telling their horror stories of being laid off. I think that would give those workers and the so-called DEI workers, the Black workers, as Dr. Debinga just told us, an opportunity to come together. How come we are not seeing the kind of coalition and unity to push back on this, since it is not just Black folks being impacted by these cuts?
Well, I mean, one of the things is it's been a grand total of like 2 days. I mean, it feels like, even though it feels like 23 years, I mean, it really is a stunningly short period of time. None of us have even had a chance to catch our breaths. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen anything remotely like this in terms of what has been done in the last like 32, 33 days. I mean, it's almost as if like we've been thrust into a dystopian reality, and things are just falling apart as we speak. And it's hard to even watch sports or the Emmys or the Grammys or the Oscars or whatever, because it seems like, why are we even talking about this over here? The world is literally falling apart. So I think part of what, we just got this ridiculous news about this 25% tariffs against Mexico and Canada, and then they doubled the tariffs to 20% with China. And of course, China has struck back with an additional, 20%, and then Canada and has already announced that they're going to start with 25% on like 30 billion and ratchet that up to like 120 billion of of goods and energy. And it's about to be a trade war, which we will not win. Nobody wins in a trade war. That's why we have these agreements to begin with. But I just don't think that we've had anything to prepare us for this. There have been, Ronald Reagan had a similar kind of Doge-like model for a kind of, his own little government accountability, crew as well. But because Congress made very clear that they controlled the purse, and that never went anywhere. And if you read all the commentary about Elon Musk and Doge prior to him doing what he did, people were using that as a model. Oh, yes, these kind of, extra governmental things have been tried before and they don't have any teeth because Congress controls the purse. But what we're seeing now is that Congress is sitting on its hands and, essentially giving over their authority to the president. And then that is what's terrifying, because I think, again, we're just now beginning to digest this. I believe, though, this next 30 days will be very different. I believe that, the cost of eggs, the cost of gasoline, the tariffs are going to have a major rippling effect. We always see what's happening to the Dow, right? These various indexes are taking a major hit. You're going to have other private industries are laying off workers also in line with the governmental layoffs. So I think you're going to start, and because white people are hurting, you're going to start seeing more stress and tension and more pushback. We're already seeing it at these town hall meetings. So Republicans are already starting to feel heat. You're seeing more people be outspoken, specifically when it comes to these tariffs. So I think you're going to begin to see the pressure be put on these various entities because it's starting to affect the larger constituencies.
It's interesting you say that because Dr. Domingo, one of the legacy newspapers had an article saying that quietly, a lot of corporate leaders, including a lot of Democratic corporate leaders, are saying they are quite pleased with what Donald Trump is doing. They see opportunities. They see opportunities to make more money, to get more contracts. They're chomping at the bit for the ways that they anticipate governmental functions being privatized. So are we going to see this pushback if privately these corporations see opportunities to get richer? They're already rich, they're already filthy rich, but if they see this as an opportunity, as a money grab, I don't necessarily know that they care too much about what happens to the rank and file worker, even if that rank and file worker happens to be white.
So this whole situation has me thinking a lot about the Holocaust, right? And when I think about the Holocaust, we only have the story of people who were put in the concentration camps and that particular horror. But one of the things we forget with the Holocaust was that people who were working in camps, they were working to produce something for somebody. And they were producing these things for corporate entities, right? My point is that corporations are cowards. Corporations are always going to go with the direction of the strong leader, of the leader that they fear. And when Dr. Eichardt's talking about we haven't seen anything like this, we haven't seen anything like this in America, but we did see it in Nazi Germany. The Nazis took over in less than 2 months because it's the speed at which they were moving. Right. And so when I see what these corporations are doing right now, they are going to go along with anything to build their profit. And historically, that has always been the case. And so one of the mistakes that we're having in this country is that we as a people have not learned from history because history was not taught. The three of us are those of us who are doing the 24 hours that they were doing. We know the story, but America overall does not know this history. And as I said, when you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so it does not surprise me at all that these corporations are doing what they're doing. When it comes to politics, you have companies like Toyota and the like that, always donate to both parties and, they always try to both sides things. And so if people are expecting corporate leadership to be able to see us through, no, the changes always come from the people. It's come from the activists, it's come from the young people, it's come from the communities, and the corporations will follow what they are demanded to do. So it doesn't surprise me, but what we have to do with these media outlets that we have is we have to continue to expose them because corporations don't have spines. And once they get exposed, they will make the change. Just like the MLB moved the All-Star game from Georgia because of what was happening with voting rights a few years ago, but they haven't done anything else since because there hasn't been a major demand on them. We have to keep the pressure up.
So you mentioned young people and students. So Dr. Icard, there's another article. I'm all over my paper, my legacy papers, that came out a couple hours ago that said Columbia University, the epicenter of a lot of the protests involving the Gaza, the war against Gaza, that Trump and his Department of Justice is now investigating Columbia because they said they haven't done enough work on anti-Semitism, and 50 billion or some huge number is at stake in terms of contracts that Columbia University has with the federal government. So that is not going to bode well for students that want to lead a movement, lead a protest, because Trump and team are going to make it very difficult for these universities to operate. So I would expect we're going to see more crackdown, making it more difficult for the students to lift their voices on these issues.
I think you're exactly right. And I think many of us, I came on this show, we're talking about that Project 2025, where they were outlining like all the things that they were going to do to be able to put the squeeze on institutions that had traditionally been excluded from the political platform. And one of the reasons that universities are a target, and this is very important to take note of, is that first and foremost, the numbers of white men who are going to universities is dropping. That number is dropping. They're down to like 39%. Black women are up to like 62, 63%, right? And so you're seeing a major, the growing gap in terms of men and women in any group. The fastest growing gap is between white women and white men. So first and foremost, one of the reasons they're targeting universities is because universities are also the intellectual incubators of these critiques of white supremacy. And these critiques of white supremacy and these dynamics where we're talking about gender, race, sexuality, things like intersectionality, which Black feminists kind of brought into the critical fore, are making these kind of white men on these campuses feel intimidated. They're not at the center anymore. So universities now are targets of this for that primary reason. And I think what we also need to keep in mind is that like 63 million white people are living below the poverty line. And what we know historically, as the young brother said, earlier, is that when Black people seem to have any type of like advancement, there's a backlash, right? Carol Anderson talks about this in White Rage. I'm blanking on the title of the white scholar who talks about aggrieved entitlement. You have these white men, particularly, who feel they are aggrieved in terms of certain kind of advancements because they are entitled to have jobs, go to college, be able to do these things over Black and brown people in particular. And because of that mentality, any kind of movement towards equality is experienced as somehow anti-white, as somehow taking away from their authority and their power. So there's a reason why they're targeting universities. There's a reason why this is happening. But I don't think that this is the time to then shirk and run away. I think what various movements, including the civil rights movement, has demonstrated time and time again, because again, it's exactly right when he says that corporations are cowards. Universities are equally cowards. Yes. They are equally cowards. You will see, I've got a sister that's one of my dear friends at Emory University is with just posted something on Instagram where there was a discussion amongst some upper administration to department chairs about just caving to Donald Trump's kind of DI demand that things like Black cultural centers, LGBTQ plus organizations, we're not even talking about like in the curriculum, we're talking about just having a club.
Yes.
Right. You got to eliminate these things in order to receive federal monies, which is, of course, illegal. Is blatantly racist.
So wait a minute, Dr. Iker, she posted that Emory instructed the team that they were going to capitulate and eliminate these clubs?
That it was a part of a conversation. It was a circulated email. It was a meeting, and then it was circulated email that ended up in her inbox, in which I think it was a vice provost, basically was telling chairs, there was a meeting, that it seemed like the move, almost the inevitable move, was to cave to these DEI pressures, because it was potentially going to cost the university millions, if not billions of dollars, right? And then she posted in kind of protest her course, and she had blacked out any mention of race and gender. So like she had this whole course with all these, redacted words on the I thought that was brilliant move on her part, and basically saying like, so you just want to cave to a dictator who's saying you should just erase the existence of this whole field of inquiry just because it may offend white men. Well, what do we just want to teach? White supremacy? Is that the new goal of the university? Is that, what are we doing?
Right.
And the fact that that's even like, money is a capitalist society. So when you start talking about dollars, we're beginning to see the needle move. And I think the capitalists and the oligarchs understand that and understood it in a way that I don't think a lot of folks, maybe even activists on the ground, understood it. And so they're going full court, full frontal, full steam ahead, and trying to ram this down our throats, because I do believe that the fear is that by the time you get to the midterm elections, and if you have a backlash which results in a Democrat sweep in the Congress, then a lot of this stuff will be at least challenged, and they're trying to get as much done as possible. And I don't think it's terribly nefarious, because I just saw, I'm forgetting the brother, the commentator, who just said that the goal may in fact be for there not to be any more elections, right?
Yeah, we know that they've been floating that trial balloon. But Dr. Rabouin, these universities, Columbia University, Ivy League University, Emory, we can just do a roll call on these universities. They have some of the highest paid and arguably some of the best lawyers in the country. So they know that legally there is no legal basis for the elimination of Black clubs or a queer club or a Latina club or a Black graduation. So why are these universities not standing up and challenging the Trump administration? Now, obviously, Dr. Iker just said capitalism and money, but the law is on their side. When they capitulate, they are sending the message that without the law, without any legal basis or legal justification, Trump, Elon Musk, or whomever can make a threat, and literally centuries or at least decades of work that we've done since the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 just gets erased. That is really, 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 really bothersome, horrible, horrific. I can't even think of enough words for it.
No, absolutely. Well, I think that one of the things they said during the election cycle was that Kamala Harris had to be flawless and Trump was just lawless. The reason why many of these professors and lawyers and stuff are scared is because Trump doesn't care about the law. And so if Trump literally has the power to stop some checks from flowing because of he has his minions in there who are running this department and the like, he will absolutely do that. I mean, look what's happening with USAID, where you had the judge saying that you had to restore, the funding and so on and so forth. He just didn't do it, right? And, and then the judge, 5 days later, because we move so slow, said you haven't followed my order. Then another 2 days later, you still haven't followed my order. And Trump and Elon Musk just did not do it at all. And then John Roberts, came in and said, okay, let's hold on, because he only believes in the courts when they're on his side, right? And so that's one of the reasons why these universities are scared, because they're seeing in real time, and I'm not saying they should be scared, they should be fighting, like Mount Holyoke and the like, but we're seeing in real time them snatching people's lives away. snatching people's jobs away, snatching people's opportunities away. And the reason the universities are being targeted is because there are no liberal arts schools in dictatorships. They just don't exist. And Vladimir Putin said the most important soldiers in a war are the teachers, because they are the number one indoctrinators. And so just like I mentioned what happened with the Holocaust earlier, now I'm taking it to Russia, and we know what Putin's trying to do in restoring the Soviet Union. We have seen these types of things before. And so unfortunately, they say the difference. Dr. Madison talked about this all the time. The late Joe Madison talked about the difference in a moment and a movement is sacrifice. And too many people on these university campuses have been too comfortable for too long that they forgot to learn how to make sacrifices if they ever knew how to do it in the first place. And so they don't want to. They want to stay in their comfort zone, but now they're seeing that their comfort zone is becoming their danger zone, and they don't know how to react.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Comfort zone. I'm having this debate now with a group of my classmates, Harvard Law School. We have this 5-year reunion, and we haven't had it in a while because of COVID, and it's coming up in September. And it's called a celebration. So traditionally, it's funded by the big corporate firms because a lot of the Harvard graduates are partners at these big firms, or they are general counsel or executives in these big corporations. But now there's a whole nother situation going on in terms of their ability to raise money for this very expensive conference, because the big law firms, many of them are fearful, like these universities, fearful like these corporations, and some of them just out and out work for folks on the right. So they're making a lot of money in this moment. Some of these big firm partners make $2,500, $3,500 an hour. And so they're not willing to fund a Black reunion in the way that they have done traditionally. And there are those of us who are saying, why are we having a celebration anyhow? As you said, Dr. Eichart, the world is falling apart. So why are we, talking about Black joy when we should be bringing these quote unquote best legal minds in the country together to talk about a strategy to save our democracy and to preserve the civil rights that our ancestors fought so hard for? And there's this internal battle over that. And you said the word sacrifice. And I had to say to a friend, well, let's face it, the people in charge of the reunion are the partners at these big firms, and they aren't trying to lose their jobs or do anything that's going to, put them at odds or create tension in their workplaces. So if we can't depend, Dr. Eichart, on the brain trust to lead us, you already told us, forget the universities, forget the corporations. So the lawyers, we know, play a big role in this. Lawyers have always played a big role in the advancement of our civil rights. I mean, we can, go back to Thurgood Marshall and, Constance Baker Motley. We can just, do a roll call on the lawyers. But if so much of the legal minds have been siphoned off into these big firms, they're not available. Or the sacrifice that you just said, Dr. Dominga, I'm not saying no one is willing to do it, but that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what has to happen is there has to be a conscious awakening moment, right? I'm thinking about that moment where those young brothers invoked the notion of Black power, and how that caught the attention of Stokely Carmichael and them, how that caught the attention of the press, and people got a little scared when Black people were talking about Black power and rising up and resistance. And I think you got to be prepared. I mean, if you look at the civil rights, people have to be prepared to be surveilled. They have to be prepared to be arrested. Like this is where we are. And I think when people are like, well, what if I get arrested? What if I lose my job? What if this is where we at? I mean, I think that's part of the shock of this, is that, folks who haven't gone through those eras, and remember, Angela Davis is still very much alive, right? Ruby Bridges, all these people who broke all these barriers and had to go through, fire in order to give us some of the freedoms that we take for granted. They were facing down bomb squads and police squads that have a license to shoot, right, without repercussions. And so we didn't get here by playing nice, by following rules, by being scared to. I mean, you think about, when they were bombing churches and when people were going on marches and they could not only lose their job, but get shot down in the streets. And now it's difficult for us to get people not to shop at Target for a day, right? Our mentality about what sacrifice and social transformation means. We're talking about like what we got to give up in terms of our flat screen TVs or whatever. And people are not, it's almost like people don't, and I'm talking about Black people.
That's who I'm talking about. Yeah,
right, are not like, they're not aware of the magnitude of the moment, right? Because they're not coming.
Well, wait a minute. Are they not aware, or have we become so comfortable? And I'm gonna say all of us, because we would be in that 1%, 2%, 5%. Have we all become so comfortable that the thought of losing anything, whether it's the flat screen television, it's the house in the suburbs, it's the Range Rover, it's the $2,500 an hour that you bill at a big law firm or your corporate job. Are we built for that in this moment? Grandma and grandpa may be, they may have had a different constitution, Dr. Domingo, than what us modern folk have today.
Well, I would say the short answer is a lot of people are not built for this. And some people are getting built for this. Some people are going to be forced to be built for this. But we've been, all too comfortable. And the reason why we really need to get on this right now is because one of the other differences between what's happening with now and the civil rights movement is Trump is doing all of this yet, and he hasn't used any violence yet.
Good point.
With the exception of some of the way these arrests are happening with undocumented people, but for the most part, even those people, are being just walked away in handcuffs and the like, and that's tragic. But there've been no bullets, there've been no bombs, there's been no blowing up of anything, and Trump has access to all of that too. In addition to control of the armed forces in many different ways, and people are in the army are not supposed to obey unlawful orders. But we know for years many of these racists have been infiltrating these organizations. He also let loose the insurrectionists, so he has his own version of brown shirts as well. And so much has happened to break this country down, and not a single shot has been fired. What was the idea that, what was it, Mussolini? Someone correct me. I'll take over the United States without firing a single shot. Like that idea, because I believe that Trump is a Russian asset. But so that part could be coming sooner than we know, if people don't start to continue to organize and stop this now. Not this wait for the midterms, not wait for 2028 or whatever. Continue to work that's happening now to stop this now, because we all know that Trump is a violent man to his core. All of the talk, well, can't you shoot them in the leg? Can't you do this? And so on and so forth. He has no problems with any of it. And he's just waiting for that proper moment to possibly unleash it if we don't stop it now.
But how do we, Dr. Icard, get that message? Because some would say we've lost the narrative that, every phrase that you mentioned, Dr. Domingo, from CRT to, wokeism, now DEI gets weaponized against us. And when you use the word oligarch, I wrote that down, Dr. Eicher, that's a real big word. And trying to talk to the folks we need to be out on the streets with us, whether they're Black, brown, white, because this is going to take a whole lot of folks. We got to expand.
Yeah.
I mean, this is everybody in the country that's being impacted by this. But the narrative doesn't seem to be breaking through the urgency, the efforts to take us back to the 1950s when this country was segregated, the weaponizing of the Civil Rights Act to use it to protect the powerful rather than to prevent discrimination against people of color. The narrative ain't breaking through in the way
it ain't breaking through. But one of the things we do have to pay attention to, right? Well, two main things. One is the economy, right? America is also unique in terms of this violence in the fact that jokers got guns everywhere. This ain't a situation where like an army or whatever can roll into your neighborhood and then not expect to get lit. Like, I mean, I had a guy come to my house to fix replace my double ovens a couple of years ago, and the man told me he had 200 guns.
Wow.
Right. So you're talking about an armed citizenry, right? That's a whole different type of piece when you start talking about using violence to move in that direction, because that's a bigger, much more complicated piece in the way that America and guns are set up. So I want to make that clear. But I think we're already seeing with the way that the polls are moving that there is a lot of unhappiness around what is going on. There's not some kind of widespread support of Donald Trump. In fact, the support is dwindling day by day, right? The numbers are showing dramatic decline in support of these moves. And I don't think that's something to ignore, because those numbers are reflecting not just Black people, they're reflecting white people.
I don't know, Dr. Eichert. I got to stop. I don't know if I trust those numbers. I'm jaded. I feel betrayed by the numbers from the 2 elections where we had 2 of the most qualified females ever running, and we were told the numbers were there. We were told that we were going to win certain demographics, that we were going to have a certain amount of voter turnout, and it didn't happen. Right. So I'm being so discerning in this moment, because I was just in the Midwest for the last 3 or 4 days, out of my California bubble, out of my 2% or 5% bubble. And I can tell you, I didn't feel that level of unhappiness. There are a lot of Black people that I was around in the Midwest who liked what Trump was doing, who was applauding him, people applauding him for the way he handled, in their minds, the Ukrainian president, that was the toughness that they wanted to see. This notion that he will make Spanish the official language of the U.S., that he's pushing immigrants out of this country, because in their minds, these are the immigrants taking the jobs of Black folks, that he's making it clear that you are born a girl, you're born a boy, and that's it. So there are a lot of conservative African Americans and other people when you get outside of the DC, Northeast, and the West Coast. So are people really that unhappy? I mean, they may be a little disgruntled, but are they so unhappy that they will be willing to send this man, and not just this man, but every person that's a part of that administration, J.D. Vance included, packing in 2028? I'm not sure about that, Dr. Domingo.
The people have to, unfortunately, this is the society we're in. The people have to feel the pain before they're going to be willing to act. And if people just don't feel it, they're not going to do anything. But when that diabetes medication that got down to $35 starts to skyrocket again, when they stop getting that Social Security check, when certain other benefits there, people are going to look for somebody. You mean like joke when people look at their check and they'd be like, "Who the hell is FICA?" Like like that whole idea.
I'm trying to tell you.
Wait a minute, Doctor. I gotta correct myself. I think I said make Spanish the official language. I meant to say make English the official language.
Oh, yeah,
but Dr. Eichert, you are Black history studies professor, guru. We got to talk about race. Poor people vote against their own interests all the time, their own economic interests. If they didn't, we wouldn't be in this position. There were folks on my 7-state battleground tour who thought by voting for Donald Trump, somehow in their minds, that would give them proximity to wealth, and that it would somehow rub off on them. So yes, it may get rough if your Social Security check gets cut or your food stamps get
Medicare, let's not forget about Medicare. That's huge.
But there are poor states that have always and consistently voted for white supremacist type leaders, Republican conservative leaders who have not delivered for them. So is it the case that just because somebody gets a little less money in their pocket, they're going to say this guy is horrible, we need to get rid of him? I don't think history bears that out, Dr.
Well,
Eichert.
I say yes and no. What we know is that white identity, white supremacy, and any kind of affiliate to that power structure, which is what the majority of white people are. They don't actually enjoy the spoils of the white oligarchy, right? They enjoy the symbolic, right, currency of being in proximity, right? And that's been true since the Civil War, right? Where 92% of those who were fighting on behalf of the Confederacy neither owned slaves or would have owned slaves, right? So we know it's that proximity to power that becomes a central part of that identity, and that's that thing, right? That.
Oh boy. Well, we are back, y'all. It is that time. It is 9:15. We have done the overnight. We've been able to revisit some of the incredible work that we did when we had the inaugural marathon. And it has been a whole thing overnight. So we're going to kick this morning off with some level setting. I am pleased to welcome all right, you're back, Lauren.
Back.
You're back again. I feel like the late night and overnighters took a nap and then said, okay, we're back for the morning. So
Right.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Hey, Holly, how are you doing? A lot has happened overnight. There's a lot of news coming out. It's quite interesting, but it was very interesting. Look at the flashback. That was great. That was fantastic.
Oh my goodness. And we'll have some more flashbacks throughout this next couple of days. But I feel like we should kick this morning off with the while you were sleeping.
Right.
I don't know if we should say it in the terms of all the things that didn't happen or
right.
hope crushed in some instances. So what are your top headlines as you're waking up this morning?
Well, as I'm waking up, there's two things. The great Rachel Scott of ABC News, the reporter Rachel Scott asked Donald Trump, is his July 4 deadline a hard deadline? And he kind of got a little weaselly on that. He didn't say what I thought he might say, which is, no, I need this to happen before July 4, which of course is Friday. Mm-hmm. He's sounding like he might push that back a little bit. Little surprise there. Little surprise. The other thing is that the voter-rama, which of course in the Senate is just constant voting, constant amendments, with of course the Democrats putting things up that are quite embarrassing for the Republicans, if of course the Democrats can market these things. Do you want to save children's health care? Republicans vote no. I mean, so the Democrats have been very good about putting amendments up to really, I think, market for 2026. Senator also Brooks, Senator Kane put an amendment up that would have protected veterans. Of course, this fails, but the point is that there's a lot to market here for the Democratic Party. They have broken the record for a number of votes in a voter-rama, which was 45. They're at about 48 or 49 votes, which breaks the record. This is not supposed to go on forever. And when it goes on forever, the top headline is, you don't have the votes for passage. And you don't have the votes for passage because we're watching now at the back of the chamber, having chats with Vice President Vance and, of course, the Majority Leader John Thune, Susan Collins of Maine, who is somebody who usually folds, quite frankly. But the rumor is that she is not hard saying that she's going to vote for this. So, I mean, she does play this a lot. We've seen this routine before. We've seen this dance before with Susan Collins, where we don't know what she's going to do. And then, of course, she votes for whatever Donald Trump wants her to vote for. Right. But really, we know that Rand Paul is voting no. We know that Tom Tillis is voting no. And Lisa Murkowski, who they had a deal with to save Alaska from some of the worst aspects of this bill, the SNAP money, the Medicaid money, they are basically saying now that that's, of course, off the table. I shouldn't say they're basically saying. The parliamentarian of the U.S. Senate said, nope, you can't do that. So now they've got to deal with Murkowski again, and that's problematic. So the headline is, they have not, when you see them lingering like this, it's because they don't have the hard votes. And I'm not surprised they haven't voted. So.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we were initially tracking that they might pull a vote last night around between 1 and 2 a.m. And literally shout out to the folks who are giving us the real-time updates, not just the stuff we're observing on the internet, but the watchers who are down at the Capitol giving us that.
Right.
But they were like, yeah, no, they're not going to pull this off. So we were like, okay, well, we'll be back in the morning. Yeah, I wonder, and you know, as we are, and I want to put this up to get people started, because let me just say, it is not too early to start those actions. And so this is a perfect time. Text POWER to 20707 to call your senator. And it sounds like, especially if you are in Alaska, or if you just feel compelled to call McCloskey, that's a good place to start. Like, let's get her on board. Let's put some pressure to her. Let's let her know that, yeah, it's not okay to sell Alaskans down the river. Make a deal that works, because maybe if she makes a deal, that might push some other folks to say, well, wait a minute, my constituents have been left out. We're going to let this pass with an Alaska carve out, but nobody's looking at what could possibly be happening, I don't know, in Tennessee. Feels to me like somebody from Tennessee, I'm just saying, somebody from Tennessee may want to see if they could get a carve out too.
Unbelievable. You know, Tennessee, a lot of these red states, Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisiana, North Carolina, they're going to get hit hard if this thing passes. And as we saw the other day, Senator Tom Tillis realized that. He did the numbers, he did the analysis using folks on the left and right, and found that the money is, as he said on the floor, not there. Yeah. There's somebody who posted a very interesting clip reel of President Trump saying he wasn't going to cut health care, he wasn't going to cut Medicare, he wasn't going to cut Medicaid, he wasn't going to do this, he wasn't going to do that. And they put it all together. And when you look at that, that is what Senator Tillis was talking about when he said he is going to have to break his promise. This is going to be embarrassing later, 2 and 3 years from now, when reality hits. I actually think it hits before that. But the point is, that is the numerical reality. You know, these votes always come down, it seems like, to some of these, quote, moderate Republicans. Of course, that is a relative term. But Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski are moderate when you compare them to some of the others in the chamber, and certainly when you compare them to the MAGA right in the Republican-controlled House. But again, Susan Murkowski, you know, as much as the Democrats probably would hate to admit it, she's very good at looking out for Alaska. And to your point, Holly, I mean, the folks that are in Alaska, this is the moment to be calling. This is the moment to be blowing up the phones. This is the moment to be making contact. And I would say the same thing in Maine with regards to Senator Collins. This is the moment right now. There are a lot of moments in politics that happen. Obviously, we had a major one last November 2024. But this is a moment where if you think that you don't matter when you call these offices, I'm telling you, as somebody who's worked in 4 congressional offices, it matters. They take the stats of who calls in. They write it down and they tell the member, this is what people are saying when they call in. So it does matter when you contact these members.
I tell people, if you've never been a part of an official poll, an unofficial poll is to call your member.
That's right.
that is like your proactive poll. I also have spent a little time on the Hill, and I actually, one of my first intern jobs was to actually calculate those call numbers, answer the phone, and do the little, now look, I'm old, so we had hashtag, you know, we were just putting a little tick mark. And literally, I had a notebook of what was going on in the house that day, and I would literally have to answer the phone and put tick marks for and against, and write out some of the more compelling stories. So when I think I just want to uplift, Lauren, when you say your voice matters, this is the time that it matters. And we may not actually win, but we are making them think really hard about this. You know, one thing that's catching my attention, as I am thinking, you know, I admit I'm a political animal. I'm really thinking about the 2026 elections already. And I'm looking at these polling numbers. I'm looking at the favorability ratings for the Republicans overall, Donald Trump in particular. And boy, these things are sinking like a weight in the ocean. And you would think this might make them take a beat.
Right.
but maybe not.
Well, you know, the thing is, they are trying to give a tax cut gift to their donors. That is what we're watching now. And they have to find the money to do that, right? So the
Yeah.
first order of business right out of the gate is we have to give our donors a tax break. That is the priority of this iteration of the MAGA Republican Party. That is what we're watching right now. So
Sure.
nobody thinks about what happens tomorrow. But of course, as you know, Holly, in politics, the pendulum always swings back, and I suspect that it was going to swing back extremely hard in 2026. There's a ton of market to market here for the Democratic Party. Some of that swing back we will see in New Jersey and Virginia in November. And the
Right.
rest of it we'll likely see in what I think will probably be a flip of the U.S. House in 2026. Because when you start messing with people's money and their health care, and people are starting to pay $1,000 more a month for health care, they're not going to not notice that. Everybody is going to notice that. And of course, that has a negative trickle down effect on people's personal budgets. Everybody understands that.
Everybody gets it. And you know, it always amazes me. Actually, not always. This year in specifically, it has amazed me how they don't seem to even care about the numbers at all. And I know that progressives and Democrats, sometimes we get criticized for being overly data sensitive. But I have to say, I am surprised that they were not more crafty in moving these tax cuts. You know, what we have seen from past Republican administrations is not that they don't deliver tax cuts, but they do them very incrementally. Right. They spread them out over a number of pieces of legislation. And this has been especially true when they have control of both chambers. This just feels like they have totally abandoned what has worked for them in the past at the expense of their own people.
Well, Holly, they've dropped all pretense not only on tax policy, they've dropped all pretense with regard to corruption, oversight, and everything else. It is out in the open. They are not trying to hide. They're not trying to pretend. They are moving contracts and money to family, to friends, and to donors. That is what they are doing right in front of everybody's face. The reason they're able to get away with it is twofold. They dismantled the FBI. They dismantled any investigative piece in the federal government that can look at anything that they're doing that, of course, is corruption. And also, they've pretty much controlled the media. I mean, the media is a big, massive fail. And when the media is a big, massive fail, you can get away with this. When CNN decides that they're going to promote Trump into office, which is effectively what they did in 2016, and not really make any real correction of that. When we spend 3 months talking about a book about Joe Biden and then completely ignoring the current president and the actions that he has taken, which is what CNN was doing. CNN is a major driver of this problem. So is the New York Times, because we still live in a media culture where if they broadcast something or if the Times prints something, everybody copies it. No one is doing, I shouldn't say no one, but few are doing independent journalism and checking some of the themes and some of the things that the Times and CNN tend to put on. So knowing that when you build your own right-wing ecosystem that is not reporting any of the negative things that you do, we have Fox News, of course, effectively hiding everything that they do that is negative and marketing that everything is great and fine and the whole problem with this country is immigration. So when you have that going on, which you did not have that going on when Ronald Reagan was president or George W. or George H.W., you didn't have that. They didn't have that advantage. The media would call them on that. We do not have that now.
Yeah. I hope that this does not become the tactic that everyone starts to use, which is threaten everybody, put so much fear in literally everybody that you can just plow through and do whatever you want. At some point, as you say, there has to be, the pendulum has to start swinging the other way. And as we've seen with a lot of these backlash moments, when it swings back, sometimes it swings back really hard.
Oh,
so
it's
now,
yes, absolutely.
So in that thought, you know, because, you know, I am a person who wants to be thinking about the hopeful piece of this. So we have given the doom and gloom for sure. My now thought is leaning in towards what kinds of things should we be preparing to do as part of the pendulum swing? We know that I think this is a moment, not a good moment. We hit something bad, but then we got to be prepared to come with something audacious to kind of build that momentum to start that pendulum swinging back the other way. What are some things that we could be doing in this moment?
Well, this is definitely a moment of clarity when it comes to who controls the money, how money is controlled and allocated, not just from the federal government, but in private public partnership and everything else. This has always been a systemic problem, of course, for African Americans in this country for historically based reasons. But we have to get control of the money. We have huge spending power in this country, and we need to get real about how we use it. You saw the effect of it on the Target fast, where when we do some marketing around being very pointed toward where our dollars go, we can control the game and we can control the narrative. There's no reason that cannot be the case. I'm sure you saw late last week, President Trump was interfering with the University of Virginia. This is one of the, biggest endowment. I mean, this is a flagship university in Virginia, obviously, and in the country. He's able to mess with their money. So of course they get, millions in federal grants, just like so many other schools. And he controlled that to the point where we pushed the president out. And so there's a lesson in all of this, and you have to control your money. And I think certainly in our community, we're able to do that through a lot of institutions, certainly the church being one of them. But there are others as well. We just have to be very focused about it, because you can see in all of this, the leveraging point, as we all know, is the money, is being able to threaten people. You see it not only certainly with what Trump is doing, but you certainly see it in political fundraising. You see it on the operative level. You see it on a lot of levels, and we gotta control that. And I think we can. There's no reason that the Black community can't do it. We just did it with Target. We do it with any company that we wanted to, not just Target. So that right there is a piece. And you hear folks in the community talking about that. I think we have to talk about it on a greater scale.
I want to point out, because this is another thing, folks are looking, or seem to be looking, for leadership. And I want to just spend a little bit of time calling out who have been some of our leaders that we should continue to support and look to, because I think that part of this story gets lost. We are not in a moment where we can have huge gains at this time, but we've got a lot of really effective leaders that are standing up, that are holding the line, and that are really leading us through something that is going to be pretty bad. Who can we look to?
Wow. I mean, I think about Reverend Jamal Bryant, obviously, because I just brought him up.
Absolutely.
And his efforts. I mean, there's so many people that I think about. Donna Brazil is out there, and always somebody who comes up with some great stuff. Stacy Abrams is out there, and there's always someone who comes up with some thinking that makes sense that a lot of times people are not talking about. With Stacy Abrams, that came up with the obvious idea that, if you can get your voters to the voting booth in droves and stop trying to convince people who are voting against you historically, you will win. And obviously for African Americans who are voting 90+% for the Democratic Party, what that should have meant for Democrats is you focus on Democratic voters, you get them into the booth, and you have a more than 90% chance that they support your candidate. Instead, what the party tends to do, of course, is spend a lot of money on the expensive voter, the so-called white moderate. And that was something that Stacey Abrams came up with. That's got to be now almost 10 years ago. Right. Yeah. And here we go back again to the same thing. Right. So it's like we're hearing it again. We're hearing it in Virginia. I'm sure that New Jersey, I haven't really checked New Jersey too much, but I'm just saying, she's somebody that when I listen to her, I think, okay, well, this is new thinking. This is different thinking. Right. Gosh, there's a lot of people out there, Holly, that I'm a big Teslin Figaro fan. She thinks outside of the box.
She was on yesterday.
Exactly. And she is not somebody just going along with what everybody else is doing. She's going along with the reality of what life is and not the dream and the fantasy. Right. And I like that part of her commentary. She also concentrates a good deal of her efforts on grassroots African Americans who are out there in these communities that on a lot of the calls that we're on are not involved for a lot of reasons. And I think a lot of those reasons are quite logical, because if you don't see change over time, you are going to say to yourself, what is going on here? But I love the sort of Wes Bellamy, Tez always bringing up, hey, how do we reach the people who have checked out? You know, I like that conversation. I think that's a conversation that we need to amplify and put money into, you know, and be very deliberate about. The other one out there I think about in terms of politics is Terrence Woodbury, the information that he comes forward with that you're not hearing in a lot of meetings, in a lot of rooms. His polling information is quite interesting. Cornell Belcher, of course, is another one that kind of comes into that category. They are not activist leaders as such. I mean, they're pollsters, but you know, they're talking in focus groups to real people out there, a lot more than some of the folks, say in academia, that you might see more on a MSNBC segment. So there's a lot of folks out there that are not sort of declaring themselves as leaders, or not running for office, or maybe not even involved directly in public policy, but they make some really good points that turn out to be right, you know, 6-7 months later. There's a lot of folks to mention there, a lot of folks to mention.
I love that, and I agree with you. And I have to say thank you. I didn't know you were going to go do this, but I want to acknowledge that you had a very eclectic list, and that's great, because I think one of the things that we need to understand in this moment is that we need leaders of many faces. That we need leaders that are representing a lot of different points of view. Because we have a growing diversity amongst Black people, amongst our community, and we need voices that are representing a bunch of different segments. You know, I think about leadership, and you know, also in this moment, one of the things that I'm looking at is some of the things that are moving in the court.
Right.
You know, we spent a lot of time yesterday, and we will again today, looking at the Congress ad nauseum for sure. But I want to spend a couple of minutes just thinking about some of the things that are facing us in this freaking Supreme Court. We had a hell of a week last week. Certainly, especially, and I want to note that I think this strikes again when the Supreme Court not really paying attention to the underlying issue, and instead focusing on how they are limiting lower courts from being able to issue nationwide injunctions against the administration, and how detrimental that is going to be, not in the sense of just stopping bad things. That's one thing, but you know, how we could end up in very differing places based on geography, based on where people live. So you tend, at this point, while we have made strides in the last few years, we know that some of our most conservative judges on the bench are in the South. So we could very well end up with a space where, you know, people in Kentucky becomes a foreign shopping thing, and that they have certain injunctions that only apply to, let's say, New York, because we got better judges there. But folks in Kentucky don't get to take advantage of that. They still are subject to whatever the bad policies are. And in that, you know, shout out to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson for writing some incredible opinions about this. I wonder if people recognize how detrimental that's going to be.
Well, you know, it's funny. Obviously, this court has been handing more and more power to Donald Trump. You know, I actually find it oddly amusing because they're acting as if Donald Trump is going to be around for the next 100 years. Well, what happens when a Democrat gets in there, particularly if somebody gets in there who's a little bit gangster? I mean, I don't know who that would be, but one of the leadership issues here for the Democratic Party is you need to bring the gangster like MAGA brings the gangster, right? They come in here with no shame, do whatever they want, and don't think twice about it. Now, I know a lot of people might argue, well, Trump's a special character. He's doing this and that. I don't know about that. But if you're going to hand all this power to the executive branch, what then happens if a Gavin Newsom shows up and decides, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I want, or a Wes Moore decides as president, I'm going to do whatever I want, and let's just see what happens. Because if you're using this argument for Donald Trump that he can do whatever he wants, and the executive has all this power, the sort of Stephen Miller Federalist Society nonsense, well, okay, let's see what happens when Team Blue gets in there. That's going to be sort of interesting just on its face right there. You're right about Ketanji Brown Jackson, certainly, and Sonia Sotomayor, who brings it hard, but they are going to, unfortunately, the reality of it is, and let's just keep it 100, it is very likely that President Trump is going to get 2 more picks to replace Clarence Thomas and Alito. And those picks are probably going to be somewhere in their late 40s or early 50s. But nonetheless, if you're handing all this power to one branch of the government, at some point when the pendulum swings back, and it will swing back, I know there's a lot of cute jokes about, oh, he's not going to leave, he's not going to do this. First of all, number one, he can't live forever. Number two, Vance doesn't have anywhere near the charm, or I shouldn't say charm, the political sort of, brazenness of Donald Trump is not there with any of the other characters that I see in the background. Yes. And part of the reason that Trump can get away with what he gets away with is the longevity that he's been in the public space. The brazen brashness does have kind of a petty, I don't want to say humor, but for example, this morning, he took a 4x4 to Elon Musk that if you're on the left side of politics, you would find very enjoyable, bringing up Elon Musk's, the fact that Elon Musk only exists because of the American taxpayer and all his businesses, and really going after that. And hey, let's look into this. Trump has that sort of petty, almost comedy about him that these other people don't have. He's not going to be there forever. And the Democratic Party has to get real about how they wield leadership and power in this era of politics, where we see somebody trying to change from a democracy to an autocracy.
I mean, I got the T-shirt, literally. I decided. I literally was like, I mean, this is the thing when you've been 30 years working in civil rights and democracy politics, voting rights politics, whatever. I have a T-shirt for every value. And I said, today is going to be democracy. We have, we have Bobby Scott joining us in just a minute. Virginia, I know we're excited about. I was going to say, we're going to leverage Virginia again. And before he joins, because I know you are a proud Virginian, I just want to get I want to deviate just a moment for just like 3 minutes to talk about the election that's happening in Virginia. And what can Virginians be doing, because they literally have an opportunity to vote to change some stuff that's happening in the state for them now, because now these states have become even more important. So love to hear your take on what's happening in Virginia politics this year.
Well, what's happening this year is, of course, Virginia has the off-year gubernatorial election. And on the Democratic side, the nominee is Abigail Spanberger. The LG nominee is a state senator named Ghazala Hashmi, who's Muslim, which is the first in Virginia. And the attorney general nominee is Jay Jones, who comes from a historic civil rights family in Norfolk, and he's Black, and he's very exciting. He's 36, and he's young and very exciting. On the Republican side, they have actually some history going on their side. Winsome Sears, the first Black female lieutenant governor of Virginia, Republican, born in Jamaica. They have John Reed, who was a radio host in Richmond. He is an openly gay Republican who, by the way, is dating a Black man. And so it's like amazing. And then we have a Cuban American, Jason Miyares, who is the sitting attorney general in Virginia. They're actually having a rally today that I'm going to, their first time together, the Republican ticket in Vienna, Virginia. But at any rate, it is expected that Abigail Spanberger will frankly walk into the mansion, okay? Because the way the history works and the cycle works in Virginia, it really is to her advantage. This mirrors the 2017 cycle that gave Virginia Ralph Northam, Justin Fairfax, and Mark Herring, where they just swept, because that was, of course, the first year after Trump's first term, 2017. Right. and they swept in. That is mirroring this cycle. You know, I think that Abigail Spanberger, the former congresswoman, is a little bit more conservative and moderate than a lot of progressives would like. That is talked about. But in fairness to her, she was in a very tough district in Virginia's 7th, where you can't just run totally to the left. She did have to moderate in terms of, you've got a lot of red voters in that district. You couldn't just show up and be, you know, somebody like a Mondami or something like that. You're not going to get away with that. So
that's not going to work. I agree.
Yeah. So that was part of the challenge for Abigail Spanberger. But I do think she's going to cruise. I saw her speak at Network Nova. We have a bunch of mostly white women in Northern Virginia who have something called Network Nova, and they have a women's summit. But they're very conscious and very good about keeping it diverse and putting Black folks on stage and getting Black people involved, even though they're predominantly white women's thing. But they're very good at being conscious about the diversity levels in there. But at any rate, Abigail spoke. She was very good. She was fire. She is a graduate of UVA, so she was, I think, in part fire because, of course, the UVA president just gotten pushed out. So I do think that this is going to be a very good year for the Democrats. They control by only one vote the House of Delegates in Virginia, and a very close Senate as well. Of course, we have a historic speaker, Don Scott. I think he's going to pick up 6 to 10 seats. So that is a very quick overview before we have one of the most, I would say, one of the most prolific, I actually think he is the most prolific member of the Virginia delegation, Bobby Scott. He is gotten more things passed than anybody, has been at more bill signings. I mean, including, there was a moment when Trump was president the first time, they did a thing on apprenticeships. And there was an apprenticeship school that was built in Newport News in Bobby Scott's district, and he's standing amongst the crowd, and Trump shouts him out and shakes his hand. So I've seen Bobby Scott with Republicans and Democrats get things done. He's a friend, and he's an extremely hardworking member of Congress.
I love it. I love every bit about this. I'm excited to get him up and on. I want to just spend, you know, you mentioned support, and I just want to throw this out here. If you are still with us, if you have been with us, just know that this effort of State of the People is largely powered by volunteers. We are not getting paid for this. We do this because we love our people, because we believe that this is that serious that we're willing to make sacrifices to get this done. But there's still expenses. And so I'm going to do a plug for go to, if you're not watching this feed on our website, which is stateoftheppl.com. Please go to our website and hit that donate button so we can continue to at least pay for some of these platforms, to maybe buy a few of our folks who come on a lunch or something like that. Make sure that we are appreciating and getting this word out. So if you are so inclined, and before they completely obliterate you financially, you know, send us $5 and let us keep this going. In the meantime, I am doing a tour right now with a bunch of different women's groups and organizations, and giving this speech that I have affectionately labeled "We All We Got." And so State of the People is certainly an example of we all we got. And one of the things that we're going to be doing as we continue to kind of roll through these days and maintain our opposition to the big, beautiful mess, also known as a bill, is going to be to is also point out moments where we are showing care for each other, point out moments and ideas where even in this tough moment, we can support each other, point out opportunities, even locally, where good things can happen. I see we have, as we affectionately know her as Queen Gayleen, loading in here. So
nice.
We know
power players in here. That's
the
great.
power players are on the way. We are definitely going to be over indexing in Virginia this morning, as we should. Virginia is a very critical state this year and every year. Look, and even our producer, Ryan, who is hanging in there with us, is shouting out the 757, shouting out VA all day. So we see you, Ryan. We see you. I'm not a Virginian, but I'm supportive. Okay, I'm supportive. Richmond was actually one of the tour stops that I was able to support. And so just, really excited. We'll get Gayleen up here as soon as we see her on camera. She's not quite at that point yet. But I want to dig into some of the powerhouses that we are seeing also in the state legislature in Virginia, because it does feel like a lot of those legislators are somewhat mirroring some of the powerhouses that we're seeing coming out of the Congressional Black Caucus. The Virginia Black Caucus has some pretty heavy hitters too. I know one of my favorites, and it's mainly because I'm here for the foolishness when necessary, is Senator Lucas. But who are some of the other heavy hitters that we're seeing in the legislators? Some of them pretty young, so I got my eyes on what's going to happen to them, their future careers.
Oh, absolutely. So you just named the heaviest hitter, Holly. So Senator Louise Lucas is the chair of the Finance Committee, controlling billions of dollars in Virginia, and has seen so many types and so many histories in Virginia at a little bit over 80 years old, and started as a shipbuilder, a welder. I
did not know that.
Yeah, he's got an unbelievable history, Louise Lucas, and she knows what time it is. I mean, it's not like one of these people who's sitting there and doesn't get what's going on. Very in the style of Maxine Waters. The other big heavy hitter, it's Portsmouth again. It's Portsmouth is Don Scott, who is the Speaker of the Virginia House. He is, of course, the first Black Speaker of the Virginia House. But more than that, he is a top litigator in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and at a big law firm. And then people sort of don't really pay too much attention to that. But he's got one of the most interesting stories in all of American politics, having served 8 years in prison. He was like he was a money mule, and they caught him, and somehow comes out of that experience, gets his law degree, passes the bar. I think actually had the degree beforehand, passes the bar, and was in the Navy, ranked in the Navy. This unbelievable political story, which I'm sure we're going to see in a movie or a feature film at some point. With regard to the younger members, Michael Fagan's down in Virginia Beach, is a member in a very tough district that he keeps winning. And so I have a feeling that he's going to really benefit from the work of Don Scott and the negative activity that you referenced before with regard to President Trump, Holly. He's a younger member who, career Air Force, an unbelievably good member of the House of Delegates. Interestingly enough, for Bobby Scott, his niece is serving in the House of Delegates. And even though she's related to Bobby, which of course can never be a bad thing, she's really carved out her own identity and her own career. Yes. And that would be Sia Price, who is not only a chair of an important committee, but also has been working on voting related legislation, voting reform legislation. Down there also is Jackie Glass in Norfolk. Jackie Glass is really, to me, the closest that we have in the Virginia House of Delegates, is somebody who's, quote, a real person serving, a grassroots person who actually beat somebody in a primary she wasn't supposed to beat, AOC style. Great member of the House of Delegates in terms of the work ethic and always being there. And, you've got so many people who are former military, but some who are not, some who are just sort of have worked their way up as social workers, as nurses, et cetera, and so on. There's a lot of folks that I can name that are quite prolific, but they are being driven by the field marshals, and the field marshals are really Don Scott. Mamie Locke is another one.
I was just getting ready to say.
Professor at Hampton University, who is a member of the Virginia State Senate, in the historic Hampton, Virginia, where, of course, the first Africans arrived in 1619. So Mamie Locke is always finding herself at some historic event, but a very, very smart and direct, no nonsense member of the Virginia Senate.
Well, I can tell you, I am definitely watching. I have I have a secret, not so secret passion for state legislatures. As part of the work that we do at Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, we track every Black woman running for office, every race, every year. Last year we tracked 1,204. So we know that is rising, but the illustrious man of the hour, Representative Bobby Scott, has joined us. We're going to go right to him. We know his time is valuable. Good morning, Representative Scott. We are excited to have you joining us. We know the Congress has a heavy weight on its shoulder this week. I believe the House goes back in session tomorrow. We've been talking about the overnight activities of the Senate. Would welcome your comments on that, but ultimately we want to hear what should we be looking for in the House tomorrow.
Well, we'll convene when the Senate finishes its work. We obviously can't work on a bill, excuse me, until the Senate finishes, and they're still working on it. Everybody expects it to pass. Trump will make a couple of phone calls, and people who have very serious concerns about the bill will see those concerns just evaporate, and they'll just jump in line. It's just phenomenal. I think the only question is who gets to vote no and vote their conscience. But I'm confident they'll get the votes. And but I think you just first have to look at and so we'll convene when either tomorrow or Thursday. And the same process will take place. A lot of people will huff and puff about how they don't like the bill. One Republican has, I think, at least 40% of his constituents are on Medicaid, and he's cutting Medicaid. And he voted for the bill at least 5 times already. I think he voted for the framework. He voted for the bill. They voted on it twice. They snuck a second vote through real quick when nobody was looking. And then it's going to come back. He'll vote for it again. So I think you just have to look at the bill. It is massive tax cuts, heavily weighted to the wealthy. They're going to cut Medicaid. The numbers keep going up. Every time they make a change, the numbers go up. It's almost 12 million right now. It's at least 11 million will lose their Medicaid. They're going to cut nutrition benefits under the SNAP program. They're going to make it harder for students to go to college. And they're going to run up the debt at least $3 trillion compared to just going home and doing nothing. That these are the fiscal conservatives okay, they give better speeches than Democrats on the deficit. They do. But then you have to look at the numbers. There's no Republican president since Eisenhower who left office with a better deficit than they came in with. Every president, including Nixon, since Nixon, left office with a worse deficit than they started with. Everyone without exception. Oh, by the way, every Democratic president since Kennedy has left office with a better deficit. The Republicans make it worse, everyone without exception. Democrats have made it better, everyone without exception. And they give the speeches, and you've heard the speeches all year about fiscal responsibility. And I was on the budget committee listening to these speeches, and then look at what we're voting on adds $3 trillion to the debt. You can't make this stuff up. Okay, so they're adding to the debt, tax cuts for the wealthy, and they're partially paying for it with Medicaid, SNAP, and access to college. Now, and they'll look you straight in the eye and just lie about what's in the bill. I mean, just lie.
Just lie.
Have you heard the one
Just
about
lie.
not cutting Medicaid for anybody? Have you heard that one?
Yes.
A few times, unfortunately. It's clearly a lie.
Okay. CBO says it's over 11 million, but you got to start with what they're talking about. What they're talking about is they're not cutting Medicaid for any individual person. That may be true. What they're doing is putting in paperwork requirements like you got to prove you're working.
Right.
And they've done this in Arkansas and Georgia. Congressional Budget Office looked to see what happens. And based on what happened there, they are estimating that 11 million people are not going to be able to get through the paperwork. Now, if you're in a nursing home, obviously you're going to be exempt. But if your doctor is on vacation when it's time to fill out the paperwork, what happened to you? You just lost your Medicaid.
Right.
If you are working and the boss doesn't fill out the paperwork, you just lost your Medicaid.
Right.
They have estimated that 11 million people lose their Medicaid based on that. Now, they didn't take your Medicaid. They didn't take that person's Medicaid. But 11 million fewer people are going to have Medicaid insurance. It's like voter suppression. When they eliminate a precinct, when they put in a poll tax, when they put in voter ID that you don't have, when they cut back on early vote, when they eliminate Sunday vote, fewer people are going to vote.
Right.
But they didn't take your right to vote away. Right. They just did it in such a way that they reduced the number of people that are going to vote. And they do exactly the same. They're good at it. They're so good at it that they got now Medicaid suppression. They got these speed bumps that they're going to trip up 11 million people who are going to lose their Medicaid because they know how to do it. But they'll look you straight in the face and smile. We didn't take your Medicaid. Just get your paperwork done. I mean, it's just scandalous. The only thing worse than that is the senators are trying to get away with a budget score that says this thing is going to cost about a couple of $100 billion, not the $3 trillion that it's going to cost, because they're going to use present policy as the baseline. And if you go forward with present policy, you don't have to pay for it. No, if the present law is they expire, if you extend them, you got to pay for them. That lie is so weak that they can't even get through the same bill, because in the bill they have some expiring tax cuts that they don't have to pay for because they expire. So they don't use present law. They don't use present policy. They use present law to benefit, but to save about $4 trillion on the cost, they're going to use. And so they're lying, and they can't keep the lie straight for the same bill.
Congressman, Representative Scott, I want to welcome to this Virginia party the illustrious Karen Finney, as well as we know her affectionately as Queen Gayleen.
Yes.
We want to continue this conversation. I'm going to step out and let these lovely ladies lead. But before I go, I want to, one of the things that we've been talking about, and I admit I'm still in this talking point from Karen, is right now we are really hyper-focused on the legislation in front of us, the so-called big, beautiful bill. But we know that this is actually another layer of cuts and sacrifices to working people that has been happening. As a person who is the ranking member on Education and Workforce Committee, talk about what we've already seen in terms of cuts to education, particularly around workforce development, and any additional impacts we're going to see as a result of this bill. Because I think we can't just talk about this bill in isolation. We've got to also acknowledge that a bunch of bad stuff happened before we got here, which adds insult to injury with what they're doing now.
Well, what the bill does is attack your ability to go to college. They have some convoluted calculations that for almost half the students will make it more difficult, maybe impossible, to go to college. Student loans and Pell Grants right now, you can put a package together and cover the full cost of education. So you can go, you end up with a monstrous debt, but at least you can, if you choose to go, you can go. What they have done is change the calculation. So you may not be able to get a full Pell Grant. You may not be able to get enough of a student loan to cover the cost of education. And so you have a gap. And everybody's seen the studies that show the average family can't come up with $400 in an emergency. Well, if you have a gap, how are you going to go to college? You can't go. Maybe you can go into the private loan market and get ripped off. But for a lot of students, these calculations will mean they just can't go, violating President Johnson's signing statement. When he signed the Higher Education Act, he said this means that any student in any state can apply to any college in the United States and not be turned away because the family is poor. Well, if your family is poor now, you just can't make it. They make medical school based on this just about impossible unless you can write the check to go to college. I talked to somebody at the at the Medical College of Virginia at VCU, and they said half the students don't take out student loans; they just write the checks. Well, wow. Okay, that's nice. The other half,
yeah, right,
end up heavily in debt. But I mean, they make a good salary; they can pay it off. Now, if they can't borrow their way through, that half can't go. Right. And you don't get the sense that these people care whether they can go to college or not.
Yeah.
So the opportunity of going to college is significantly diminished. They've had a voucher program in and out of the bill. It was in the House version. It was out in the Senate version. They put it back in. I'm not sure what the final version on it is, but basically you can divert money that could have gone to public schools into private schools. They want to privatize everything so somebody can make some money, and so that people don't have to go to public schools. And that has been a refrain. And let me tell you, you think some law is settled. President Trump in his first term appointed dozens of judges who would not say whether or not they thought Brown v. Board of Education was properly decided when they said segregation has no place in public schools. They wouldn't say, like there's still some controversy might come before them. They have to decide how they're going to. I mean, some things you ought to just say, well, yeah, we're not going back to segregation. They wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
They couldn't even get that. I'm turning to Karen. Karen, it's on you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I was just kind of checking in to see what's going on the Hill, and it sounds like the Republicans are having a little bit of trouble with their own people. And what I find so interesting about this whole process, two things I want to mention for our viewers. Yet another poll came out today. It was the NPR Marist poll. Majority of Americans, even some Republicans and many independents and obviously Democrats, they don't like this bill. And the more we keep seeing that, the more people learn about it, which is part of why we're doing this marathon, because we want people to know what is in it and how dangerous this is. But the more people learn, the less they like it. And it's so interesting, though, because, I mean, you know this, the Republicans, they know how bad it is. That's why Lisa Murkowski from Alaska is trying to get a special deal carved out, right, to protect her state. I mean,
she did. She got a special exemption for her state so that Alaska would not suffer would not be inflicted with Medicaid. And then the parliamentarian took that exemption. Took that exemption out.
Right. And then she's still trying to negotiate that deal. They're still trying to cut a deal with her. But this is theft. And, you know, one of the things we should talk about that I want people to understand, because I am so obsessed with this is literally taking money out of our pockets and the pockets of low-income people and middle-income people and just handing it over to billionaires. I mean, it's really... When we talk about this as a transfer of wealth,
Karen, if you just look at the bill, just look at the arithmetic. If you gain and lose, 80% of the public lose more than they gain in the bill.
That's right.
10% break even, and the top richest 10% make money. Now, how in the world you can't make everybody? You spending $3 trillion and everybody can't be happy? I don't know.
Right. How much more do you need?
They fixed it up so that 80% are worse off under the bill. So
yeah,
if only 30 or 40% oppose it, they weren't looking at it, because 80% are going to be worse off. Only 10% are going to be better off. And so the only question is which ones of the Republicans can vote their conscience and be the handful that they can afford to lose.
Right.
And so I know Tom DeLay had a system where he would line about 10 or 15 Republican members on the front row during a vote. And during the vote, as it got close and he needed the votes, he'd point at one and he'd have to go vote for it. And then at the end, when they could afford the votes, the others could run up and vote no like they wanted to all the time.
Right.
You're going to have a situation where people will be begging to vote no, but if they need the votes, they'll just switch. Now, you talk about how unpopular it is. The problem that Republicans have in unpopularity is it has to be down not in the 30s and 40s. It has to be down below the 20s before they pay any attention, because if a bill has 30% support, 30%, the Republicans look at it as 60% of their half.
Of course.
Right. Okay.
They always doing that crazy math that doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's not crazy. It's that primary vote.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
And so when Trump says I'm gonna get you, and a bill has 30% support, Trump has 60% in their primary, and so when they vote for crazy stuff, now we can get them in a general election. They always said, well, why didn't anybody pay any attention to Trump? He picks these people in the primary, but they can't win the general election. So why is anybody paying attention to him? Well, the Republicans pay attention to him because he's picking people in the primary.
That's right.
And so he will, when he threatens them, he means business. That's why Taylor said, okay, if you're coming after me, I'm going to lose anyway, but I'm going to vote my conscience.
That's right. So, Queen Gayleen, one of the things that we should talk about here, we're talking about a little bit of the politics, some of what, different parts of the bill. Let's talk about healthcare, because I know, you do a lot of work in healthcare, and a couple of things about this bill. And gosh, it's not like you don't even have to look that far into it to see. We're talking about, part of this is yet another sort of backdoor effort to defund Planned Parenthood. Up to potentially 600 Planned Parenthood clinics could close. And we know that Planned Parenthood is healthcare for a lot of people. For a lot of women, it's, cancer screenings and other services. And then on top of that, obviously, we're talking about Medicaid and home health care and even children's health insurance. Talk a little bit about that and how you see that affecting Virginia from the work you're doing.
Well, first of all, Virginia is the last progressive state, we're a Commonwealth state in the South. And we have a constitutional amendment that's so critical right now that puts women's reproductive rights in women's health into the Constitution. And so that's why this election in November is so important for us when we talk about health, amongst other things, with restoration of rights and marriage equality. Those are 3 constitutional amendments that we have in Virginia. But I've been doing this work for a while. I advocated for the Affordable Care in 2010. And when it passed in 2010 and 2013, then I started Celebrate Healthcare to educate people on how to enroll, and we enroll people into the affordable care. And when they fell into the gap, we were able to tell them how to go and vote in a nonpartisan way because they fell into the gap. And then in 2016, we were able to get Medicaid expanded, because through the people that we were using that fell into the gap. But most importantly is that Medicaid, we have over 600,000 people on Medicaid right now after Medicaid was expanded, and a lot of them are children. And so this bill right here, as Congressman Scott would say, is that they say they're not going to take away your Medicaid. But what's going to happen is that you have to be on their work program. You got to fill out the paperwork for this. And we're going to have to go and track down these people and help them fill out this paperwork. People you have lives, and then you can